Back in February, when I did my video on the remote crossover strip Robotech Voltron, what I did not expect was for that little break video to become my most viewed video of this season. It seemed to garner attention from Robotech fans of all shapes and sizes, coming to discuss the validity of many of my off-the-wall statements, bringing brief attention to my channel as one that produces Robotech-related content. Clearly, what this should say to me as a content creator is that hold on, it's coming to me. I should do more videos on Voltron! I actually really wanted to do a series of videos on the original Voltron right after I read that comic again, because it, honest to God, really got me interested in the show. And I did actually watch some of the first 3 episodes while editing the video, and as per the occurrence, every damn time I watch an old show on hiatus, within a very short span of time, Voltron was announced for a return. And as I write this, a new show is now streaming on Netflix in its entirety, a new reboot that looks very entertaining and fun. In fact, I have no doubt in my mind that I'm going to love this new show like I haven't loved something in a long time. So I guess I could just ditch the original and go straight to the one that I know is going to be something that I will appreciate.
But that would be cheating!
So I decided to sit down and go through as much of the original Voltron as I could before the temptation finally became too much and I had to check out the reboot. And what I found was something magical. Absolutely magical. I mean, because it's bad. And by bad, I mean good. In that it's bad. It's bad. I like to watch things that are bad because they are also often funny. You may know this phenomenon as so bad that it is good, which I can often find to be a bit misleading. Films and other media that are often considered to be in this category mentioned are often there because of the level of cheesiness that the film has to put forward. That is, moments that are so silly, so overdone, or so just straight up bad, that they can make the film as much as a comedy as Young Frankenstein or any other satire film. And some of these films are really just plain, unadulterated fun. But others are honestly a bit more mixed. I'd say that on average, movies that are usually considered good-bad usually do have a high amount of cheese content in them. But substantially, they also clearly show the faults that they present without the comedy as well. So a boring movie with funny moments is still going to be boring when nothing funny is happening. And a long movie is going to feel longer if the bad bits have huge gaps in between them. Voltron Defender of the Universe is a different beast altogether. While most things I would stack onto the so bad that it's good category are about 40% cheese and 60%, well, suck, Voltron is probably 50% cheese and 50% honest value. What I'm trying to say is that the original Voltron is partially so bad that it's good, but it's also just good. That is that there are good things in this show, and the bad things, more often than not, are enjoyable. Usually I was laughing, but if I removed my laughter from the situation, I'd say that I was mainly honestly invested. Sort of. It's a tricky little dicky of a situation. The first episode starts off in one of those we'll get to the gimmick eventually sorts of pilots. You know the ones, where they take a long time building up the characters reaching the events or setting that will lead to the episodic nature of the program. We start off with a small crew of space explorers who approach planet Eris, only to discover that it apparently has been taken over by the Drool Empire, an alien species whose name becomes more and more stupid every time you say it out loud. The group's ship is shot down and they are taken as slaves by the Drool, who plan to use them in an arena to fight against a 50-foot colossus.
Zarkon's staging one of his famous tournaments, and we're all invited to be the final contestants on the program.
And it'll be our final appearance, too. Ooh, just let me at him.
Where have I heard that one before?
Ben, do not pursue.
Why not? Just let me at him.
The team of course realizes that as they are not immortal gods, they would die in a fight against a 50-foot robot chicken man. Instead, they vote to try to escape.
I can reach it.
Occasionally interspliced between the team trying to make a plan are scenes of the Galaxy Alliance, who are an inconsistent number of light years away from the team and thus unable to help them in any meaningful way. They do nothing but talk about the status of the team, and this has no bearing on the overall narrative whatsoever. There is so little meaning in constantly cutting to them that I wouldn't be shocked if these guys were taken from a completely different show just to pad out the gaps left in the episodes after the initial censoring. This is by far the part of the show that I hate the most. It's literally just a bunch of stuffy idiots standing around recapping what's just happened, just so one of them can go, well, there's nothing we can do, so we'll just have to leave it to them. Let's talk about the actual Voltron team, consisting of Keith, Hunk, Lance, Pidge, and Sven. I love this team. Each and every one of them, in their own special way, are incredibly dated. You got Keith, who has this goddamn awful mullet haircut. Hunk, who is the sort of character that constantly complains about food during extremely serious situations. Lance, who is literally wearing bell-bottom jeans. Pidge, who is dressed like Marty McFly from the start of Back to the Future Part 3 and sounds like this.
Ooh, wow! I can look right down into the monster's feeding pit, and he's eating up a storm. Yeah, they tattooed my arm. Did they get yours too, Lance?
And finally, Sven. I like Sven. Hope he sticks around. Of course, I realize that these inherent faults are only appearing to me because I'm watching this program nearly 35 years after it was made to be enjoyed. I'm sure in 2050 some hipster kid looking back at old Netflix originals will bust his sides open at this reboot. I'm sure that he'll find the animation atrocious and extremely dated, and he'll call that weird half-bleached buzzcut thing much worse than any mullet ever had been. But on the other hand, I also kind of doubt that. Because even when compared to similar animations from the same era, Voltron, and yes, Go Lion as well, I suppose, suffers from severe flaws even in context. An obvious comparison would be that of the Super-Dimensional Fortress Macross, which came out the same year and, as I mentioned in my previous video, would eventually spawn its own Americanization that would be very comparable to Voltron. Macross sees the young pilot Hikaru Ichigo land on an island on Earth just as it is attacked by an alien species seeking to take back a ship that had crashed there 10 years earlier. Note that when you look at the Macross character designs and costumes, you don't feel like the show was produced in 1976. In fact, the overall look of the show isn't that out of place with what the actual 2009 was like. More importantly, the Super-Dimensional Fortress Macross has diversity in its characters, and despite the Indo-Socratic framework, it has some level of approachability to it all. Meaning that you can understand yourself being in the same place as Hikaru, or Misa, or Roy, or Carl, because you can actually relate to them and see a bit of yourself in all of them. Voltron doesn't have nearly as good a classification system for these characters in terms of A, how they are different from one another, and B, why I should care about them. Note that I say Voltron there, and not Go Lion, because as I'll explain at some point in the future, this could be an issue that is in origin to the American version alone. Okay, so what is the main difference between the 5 main cast members that were thrown in with at the very start of this story? Well, I guess the most simple one to start with is that of Hunk, who I can honestly say is just basically the comic relief with a heart of gold. He says stuff that 1982 thought was funny. He's really friendly with the other characters. I want to say that he's like Ben Dixon from Robotech. I was trying to use Macross names, but I draw the line at this shit. You know, the forwards guy who doesn't take too many things seriously, is a bit bumbly, but otherwise is a useful part of the team. But I honestly can't say that he even shows that much in the first few episodes. I think that Lance is supposed to be the sort of cute hotshot with an attitude, but again, I'm just guessing based off of how he's designed. Keith is a bit more of a logical person, as he keeps constantly yelling at people in the first episode.
This calls for brains, not brawn. Right. We'll really have to use our wits to get out of this trap. We've got to use our heads. We can't panic.
And Sven is, Russian? So little happens in these initial stories that would allow for the characters to react or act in different ways that I had an honestly hard time telling the three main ones apart for a while. They all just kinda look the same to me. If it wasn't for their very different voices, I'm sure I'd constantly be mixing up which one is the leader and which one is the slacker or the... What is your gimmick, Sven? Pidge is by far the member who sets himself apart more than anyone else in the group. He is constantly the one who decides to run headfirst into battle and is clearly the most physically agile. I mean, with that design and that voice, you'd expect him to just be another geek who's in the group because he can do, I don't know, arithmetic or something. But by and large, he is the one that kicks the most at... Now keep that in. That's kind of funny. As I was trying to say, this honestly kind of made me keep thinking, why is this guy not the leader? Even past this vague nature of their differences, as a whole, I don't see why I'm supposed to be able to relate to them in the slightest, or even see them as the heroes. I mean, obviously the other guys are like mega Nazis or whatever, so through process of elimination, I should vote for Hillary. What I'm trying to say is that the situation and backgrounds of these guys aren't something I can inherently get behind. I think they're like agents for the Galaxy Quest or something. But at other times, they're played just to be like aimless wanderers. Again, I think this is the bad dubbing. It's very inconsistent. The concept of them being agents of some big space government is sort of detached from anything that we can really understand or care about. But I guess if you were dedicated to the idea of them being wanderers, that could be done in such a way that they would at least have motivations and a history together. But it's all presented as if us knowing who these guys are and caring about their exploits is something obvious that doesn't need justification. I almost feel like there's an entire prequel show about them just flying around in this space dinghy that I haven't seen, because this show's absolute insistence on making it presumptive that we understand this team's relationship is downright jarring. Oh, and remember what I said earlier about the characters not being immortal gods? That was a joke. So of course the team decides to break out and they make a run for it. Pidge uses his ability to jump impossible heights to reach a window, and Hunk uses his strength to bend the bars. The rest of the team does nothing but benefits from these actions. Outside they are briefly attacked by giant vultures, who they grab onto to glide away from the castle before being dropped 50 feet onto a field of human remains. When I saw this for the first time, my honest-to-God gut reaction was, well, I guess if this can't kill them, nothing will. So they somehow steal the ship that brought them to the planet, escape, but are shot down by the baddies, and they crash land on Eris. I love how the head drool guy here is all like, haha, we'll shoot them down and kill them for good. But then at the start of the next episode, he's all like, now that I think about it, they're probably fine. Let's go find them. The team ejects from their crashing ship and again survives like a 30-foot fall, only to be attacked by villagers who live in caves and think that the team are part of the Drool Empire. Around here is where one of the first dubbing mistakes rears its ugly head. At the start of the episode, we're led to believe that Eris has just been attacked by the Drool for the very first time. When we see the Galaxy Alliance for the first time, they say something about the Drools denying that they have attacked the planet at all.
As usual, Zarkon's reptilian ambassadors refuse to cooperate, denying any knowledge of an attack against the people of Eris.
But the clear indication not only from the basic ideas of these scenes, but also from all further dialogue, is that the Drool have been in control of this planet for like 10 years or so. It's pretty clear that whoever dubbed this just added a bunch of footage from a completely different show to make a brand new intro, probably to pad out the runtime of the episode, or maybe just to change the context of everything that is happening. But then they decided to ignore that for the rest of the episode. The space explorers eventually make it to the big castle that they had seen when they were crash landing. Apparently there's a great legend of a castle of lions that holds the secrets on how to form the Voltron mecha. Every scene where they describe the history of Voltron, though, is kind of confusing in its own right. So apparently Voltron had been sent out when the Drool Empire first attacked, but it had been drawn in by a heavenly being, the Drool, which Hagar, according to this dub, that had knocked it back down to Earth and had split it into 5 lions hidden across the Earth. So is the insinuation here that Voltron wasn't a transforming robot before this event? And was he also an actual sentient being before this? That's kind of how they talk about him. And if it was just a robot, what happened to the pilots? Were they killed during this attack? Were they smushed in there? Did they possess the robots like... this is an ablib. I don't have a comparison. I feel like if I watched the original Japanese version, that I would be able to understand what was at least supposed to be going on here, but, As they approach the castle, they are briefly alarmed by rocks that fall from above. Pidge goes to investigate, but finds them to be nothing but a bunch of space mice.
It's only little space mice.
Space mice?
Space mice.
Space mice?
The space mice.
Space mice. The space mice are often the things that even the most diehard fans of the show will point to as the aspect that is most out of place with the public perception of what Voltron actually is supposed to be about. Remember that rabbit from the first Frosty movie? The space mice are essentially that rabbit, down to the fact that they both make the same damn noise. And it's certainly a real divergence between a show that people remember being about epic giant fighting robots and one about a talking snowman. I personally think that the space mice are the physical representation of the odd tonal choices that make Voltron a bit of an eyebrow raiser. I also love them, and all of the terrible dialogue that comes along with them.
Space mice!
It's also around here that I started to identify key things that the Robotech crossover had set up for me. As a reminder, that comic was what made me want to watch this show. The panel of the castle on fire, for instance, suddenly has some context. And later on, when one of the keys goes missing, I was like, oh, I guess the mice have it. I also keep thinking back to that flashback with King Alfor, who was painted out to be such a
space mice
badass. And it kind of helps me through these passages of characters talking about the backstory of the planet, when I actually already have a great visual for it in my head. The team gets into the castle and are greeted by Koran, who welcomes them and explains much of their predicament on the planet. He then greets Princess Allura, who comes down in regal clothing.
She's beautiful.
Koran has...
Don't ruin it! Apparently these two have been hiding out on this castle since the Drool takeover, which is a cool idea made silly by the decision to have Allura walk around like a damn Disney Princess Barbie doll all the time, glimmering and shimmering like a glitter bomb just went off in her face. I kept imagining if she had stood around like that for 10 goddamn years waiting for just one person to wander by the castle by accident, or if she just got into that costume really quickly when she saw the team coming. First impressions are everything, you know. And as is with all of these old cartoons, despite being the final remaining member of the royal family, Allura is still the princess. And she's a pretty fucking terrible ruler at that. Most of the people on this planet have been sold as slaves, and those who remain have basically become cavemen who live in the mountains like goddamn bears and throw spears at people who they don't know. Meanwhile, their glorious princess wears this frilly shit inside the castle, which clearly isn't as badly damaged as it would first appear, and in fact has all of the modern conveniences that haven't even been invented yet. And get this. You'd think from the main intro that they'd all need to search for the Zorbs across the planet or whatever, right? Some of them would be missing, they wouldn't know where some of them are, that'd be the first couple episodes, right? Nope! They do know where all the lines are, and in fact they have passageways to them. They have no trouble getting to them in literal seconds. Okay, so apparently they need keys. Do they not know where the keys are? Do they not know how the keys work? No, they're just in the tomb with the dead king. They know where the keys are. Sure, one of them is missing, but they don't know that until they go to get them. So basically, you two have been sitting on your asses for 10 damn years, waiting for any team of wanderers to pass by so you can offer them the chance to save your damn planet, when there were dozens of locals available the entire time. I'm sure fans will flock in saying that something like, the pilots had to have the hearts of a lion, but that is never mentioned throughout the entire first set of episodes. There is no note of, you can have the spirit of the job, or anything like that. It's just like,
Hey, do you guys want some lions?
hell yeah, we want some lions! An entire army of Drool ships, robots, and military troops land just to find the 5 team members, and Pidge decides to go out and fight them on his own. And he actually does a decent job of knocking out a significant portion of them. And he doesn't die! Seriously, Pidge is a character who I think I should despise. The tiny gag characters with the annoying voices are usually the worst ones. But Pidge is also the only character who has done anything outside of the group for the most part of this show. If you were going to do this sort of thing with any character, why this one? The team go to get the 5 keys, but of course one is missing. So they realize that this isn't worth their time, they leave the castle and move on with their rather uneventful space exploration careers. Alright, so this video will be continued in part 2, which I will try to get to as soon as possible. I'm a busy man, you know. If you like videos like this, be sure to subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment. You know, if you want to insult, my facial hair or something, I like that sort of thing, and I'm an adult, I'm ready to hear it. Otherwise, just keep your stick on the ice and keep moving with your life.